What is the future of housing in Seattle? Stay tuned, we're going to talk all about the ever-changing landscape of the Seattle real estate scene, the zoning that goes into it, and the brand new One Seattle draft plan that just came out this year. So if you haven't heard, the brand new draft of the One Seattle plan just came out this year. It has been nearly 20 years since the city of Seattle has updated their plan for the future. And this is needed because Seattle is growing. Seattle continues to grow, maybe not as fast as it used to, but the downtown core of Seattle, the Seattle urban center, is approaching 1 million people. And therefore there is a need, and there always has been a need, for additional housing. So you'll want to stay tuned if you want to know how this plan is going to impact you, your home if you have one, or your future home if you're thinking about buying in the Seattle area. Now, this is just part one of the series, and I'm going to take a dive into the draft One Seattle plan, what its goals are, and then stay tuned because we're going to get into what is the current zoning in Seattle right now as it is today, and what does that mean for you? And then what does the map look like for the One Seattle plan when we go around Seattle? So you won't want to miss any of this. Okay, the One Seattle plan came out as a draft in March 2024. It was brought to the public's attention for feedback and review. And today what we're looking at is the summary overview of the One Seattle plan. So the plan is a roadmap, they say. The goal of the plan is to look at the development of Seattle over the next 20 years. Now, the One Seattle plan would also put into adoption the state legislature in 2023, which is the bill called the HB 1110. It's also referred to as the Middle Housing Bill. We're not going to get to that in this video yet, but stay tuned for part two in the next video because we will get to that. Now, the last time Seattle did a plan like this was back in 2004, 2005, when they released the idea of the urban village or the urban center. And so now they are expanding on this. So as I stated before, they're planning for the population to approach 1 million people over the next 20 years. And so there's a lot of issues with affordability, racial equity, access to opportunities, and climate control. And those are really kind of the four pillars of this plan and how they plan to move forward. So like I mentioned, it prioritizes 4 key moves. So they want to expand housing opportunities across the city. That's number one, and that's very important. They want to promote a more equitable Seattle as Seattle grows. So more opportunities regardless of wealth or race or other socioeconomic factors. And then they want to focus on growth in investment in complete and walkable communities. This has a whole center around transit and being able to access transit. And they also want to meet the challenges of climate change for a resilient future. So they're calling this plan a plan that centers around equitable growth for the city. So urban village strategy, they said, concentrates housing and jobs in a limited number of neighborhoods within Seattle. And so this strategy has helped to create compact, walkable, mixed-use neighborhoods linked by transit, but it also means that many neighborhoods have few affordable housing options. And so that's where this new growth strategy, they're saying, comes in to try to address the affordable housing options by increasing the supply and diversity of housing opportunities. So this is really what this plan is getting at. So like I promised, one thing that we're doing in this video is we're going to look at the future of Seattle in this land use map. So like I mentioned, the plan centered all around the idea of urban villages. So places where you could get to transit, where there was some additional dense housing to provide more housing opportunities, as well as the ability to walk, get your groceries, do whatever you need to do within a specific neighborhood. So with the new plan, what they're proposing is regional centers, which you see here in dark blue. So a regional center right here really looks like, the first one that comes to mind at the top of the map is really looks like the Shoreline light rail stop, like right around there where people can get to the light rail, take that light rail down into the city. The second one that catches my attention is over in Ballard. So there's obviously a regional center there in Ballard. And then there's also one over by University of Washington, UW. And then you see the entire Lower Queen Anne, Belltown, downtown, South Lake Union, Capitol Hill, and really even into Yesler Terrace as the final regional center. Now, the regional center they're describing as what used to be called urban centers in Seattle 2035, the previous proposed plan, and they're the most densely populated neighborhoods in Seattle. They play an important role, they say, in the region with significant housing, office, retail, cultural and entertainment spaces, and major transportation hubs. And that makes sense because, like I mentioned, they're right where those hubs are, and really transit, especially the light rail, are a big part of that. Now, the urban center next, which we'll look at, is those were previously the urban villages in the 2035 plan. They're walkable mixed-use areas that play an important citywide role. They're designated for residents in different districts of Seattle with high concentration of shops, restaurants, and businesses. So they're residential and mixed-use structure up to 7 to 12 stories in the core, with smaller apartments and townhouses on the periphery. So these places, they say, should generally encompass areas within 2,000 feet of core business district or half a mile of a light rail station. The growth strategy includes expansion of 6 existing centers and a new urban center at Northwest 130th Street Light Rail, which is that one there in Shoreline. So when we're looking at this map, the urban center is really that around the light rail station or around that major hub. So close to the Shoreline light rail station that they mentioned, also close to Green Lake on 65th, over just north of Ballard and Crown Hill, there's this region. And then in neighborhoods like Wallingford, you see it, Fremont, we already mentioned Green Lake, and then East Lake as well, close to transit hubs, as well as Capitol Hill, almost getting into Madison Valley, down the corridor of 23rd Avenue, running north and south, and maybe even MLK Jr. right there, all the way into Seward Park, Mount Baker, these southern neighborhoods, most likely because they follow the light rail. That follows the light rail pretty well down to the airport, and then over in West Seattle. So the north side of California, as well as the middle intersection there of California, and then the southern intersection of California. And then when we jump over to West Seattle, obviously the junction right there where a lot of the traffic comes into West Seattle, as well as closer to Alki Beach and the Alaska Junction as well. So these, if you're studying this map, most likely coincide with future development plans for the light rail station. So if you look at where these fall, they're also coinciding with a lot of the light rail expansion that is proposed for many years into the future. So if you're thinking about where there's going to be more dense housing, that is probably a likely answer. Now, the other thing that we see here is neighborhood centers. And so we're seeing little hot spots, it looks like on here, of neighborhood centers in the light blue. Neighborhood centers they're defining as places with a variety of housing options centered around a local commercial district or a major transit stop, such as the Rapid Ride buses. If you don't know about Rapid Ride, those are the buses that are sort of like an express bus into downtown or over to the east side. They are focal points within a neighborhood, offering shops, services, grocery stores, restaurants, and more. They're suitable for residential and mixed-use buildings up to 6 stories, the core, and smaller apartment buildings on the periphery. They encompass areas within 800 feet or 1 to 3 blocks of central intersection of a transit stop. So that's the next one that you'll see on this map. Those are really these hot spots that you see. That's what I'm calling them. They look most like hot spots to me, and those are the lighter blue. So you see places like the west side of Green Lake, sort of Finney Ridge area. You see sort of Tangletown south of Green Lake. You also see over where 23rd comes and intersects with right around 65th, north of University of Washington. You see the basically Madison Valley, Montlake area right there where you connect the bridge to 520. You see Madison Park, you see definitely Madison Valley, the neighborhood, as well as Leschi. And then over you see like Magnolia City Center, as well as you see these areas along West Seattle like Del Ridge, and then into, you don't see very many of these into South Seattle. So a lot of South Seattle is a little bit more dense. And then the rest of the map is basically what they're calling urban neighborhoods. And so with these urban neighborhoods, what this is defined as is urban neighborhoods, places outside of the centers that are appropriate for primarily residential development, various housing types within a 3-story scale, detached homes, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, cottage houses, higher density apartments, and commercial uses may be appropriate along major streets with frequent transit service. So that means for you, if you own a house that is in an urban neighborhood, what they're deeming as an urban neighborhood, and not along frequent transit or major street, you are probably in an urban neighborhood that is not going to be redeveloped or not redeveloped as quickly. So with that said, that's a little overview of what it looks like. Stick around. In part 2, we're going to go over how these zoning changes that we've talked about in part 1 will impact the Seattle zoning landscape. And I want to hear what you think about that. If you don't know anything about me, my name is Brennen Clouse. I'm your favorite Seattle area realtor. I left Microsoft years ago to start helping people one-on-one build wealth and invest in real estate. And it's something that I'm passionate about and I love helping people do. If you have questions about the zoning, about how you could utilize your lot, be sure to reach out to me. My contact info is below and I can't wait to hear from you.